Listening to the Keon Show on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. So the president had some comments that were deeply unpopular with NFL players this past Sunday that spurred a display of unity with many players and many teams kneeling during the national anthem, or at the very least locking arms. And so we lose in the shuffle that when Trump said those things that he said about NFL players who kneel, right? Fire them or suspend them and called them SOBs and all of those things. We lose in the shuffle what Donald Trump was doing when he said those words. He was at a rally promoting Senator Luther Strange in Alabama. That's what he was doing. And poor Luther got lost in this entire shuffle. Absolutely none of those things were about him. Donald Trump goes to a rally to support Luther Strange, and none of the things that happened afterwards had anything to do with Luther Strange. And also lost in the shuffle is that for the nominee for the GOP, Luther Strange actually lost, right? Roy Moore, who was running against him, wound up winning the nomination. And so Donald Trump has to delete his Luther Strange tweets, which I don't think that's great, obviously, because it does borderline on illegal, right? The idea that the president is saying these things, and if you say these things on Twitter as the president, that is some kind of legal documentation that you are then deleting. But also, I'd like to point out that nothing is ever truly deleted on the internet. So I'm not making a big deal about that in the same way that many others are. But I will say, poor Luther Strange, for one, and two, man, now you're Donald Trump, you've got to backtrack and reshuffle and try and support Roy Moore as though he were the guy that you wanted to support all along, which is what had to happen. And Trump said he had a conversation with Roy Moore and that Roy Moore would help make America great again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you look into Roy Moore, and it is a little bit concerning, right? Roy Moore is a guy that has previously gotten into trouble because, well, first off, he has his belief of gay people and their rights is that gay people are a crime against humanity. They're a crime against nature that defies the laws of the nature of God, right? And he defied a court order that directed him to remove a tablet bearing the 10 Commandments from a state court building, right? And also that he said that the 9/11 attacks were punishment from God. So, like, I'm not looking at a guy here in Roy Moore that is a great guy, like the president calls him. I'm not seeing the comparisons here. Now, for me, this is particularly important because we do live in the South where Christianity and faith is very important. And I would not ever tell you to back away from your faith and from your beliefs. But what I would suggest is to not be so confident that a guy who wants to integrate those beliefs into the government is your best friend. I don't think that's a great idea. And therefore, I don't think that the president's sudden endorsement of that guy, never mind that you didn't even help the guy you initially endorsed win the nomination, right? Cannot stress that enough. Poor Luther Strange had his entire campaign burst into flames, and all that happened was the president antagonized the entire NFL, right? Just antagonized America's favorite game. And poor Luther Strange just lost in the shuffle, which is the whole point of having the president come and endorse you, is specifically to not be lost in the shuffle. But then the president hops on your opponent's bandwagon as though nothing happened, right? Because Roy Moore now has to run against the Democrat for that seat in Alabama. And I'm not so certain that if you're the president, just flat out endorsing Moore really helps you out here, because Moore is the guy that has a very strong belief in his faith and wants the ideas of his faith involved with governing. And I don't know that that's such a great idea. Let's start with the first idea. First off, that he's a Christian, which we say that like it means the same thing. It does not all mean the same thing. You know how many denominations of Christianity there are? There are hundreds. I mean, I don't even want to say thousands because I'm not trying to exaggerate, and I did not exactly look it up. But I know that there are hundreds at least denominations of Christianity. So when you say Christianity, what do you mean? Right? Like, I don't want the government enforcing Christianity, because when you say Christianity, what do you mean? For instance, I am a Seventh-day Adventist, which means I believe some different things about Christianity, most likely, unless you are also Adventist, than you do. The Lord's Day is Saturday, Sabbath, so far as I can understand it. But a lot of people worship on Sunday, and I'm not going to sit here and go, "Oh, let's have the squabble over that." We don't need to have that squabble on the air right now. But what I am saying is, here already is we have two very different ideas of a very basic tenet of Christianity. Who would get to enforce that? Who is the person who thinks that enforcing that's a great idea? Because it isn't. I can now not worship God and not follow the Bible as I understand it, which is anti-American. Okay, I mean, the reason why that there's a court order for that guy to remove the tablet with the 10 Commandments from the state building is not because anybody wants to be anti-Christian, but we don't even have the same interpretations of what Christian is, right? There's a basic set of things that I think we all agree on. And then you could go down a theological rabbit hole from there. I don't like the idea of the government having those opinions, right? And then the idea of morality. Okay, there are some things, and as I mentioned before, there's some things that are basically right and wrong. I want the government to enforce whether or not someone should be able to kill me or steal my stuff. Right? I would like the government to enforce those things, but we need to draw a distinction between what the government can enforce, what the government is able to enforce, and what the government should enforce. And whether or not gay people can get married should not be one of those things. Now, take in mind the already overly bigoted opinion of Roy Moore that homosexuality is a crime against nature, as though Roy Moore were somehow the arbiter on what made nature, right? Stop. But even if Roy Moore believed that, which he does, I don't want Roy Moore to be able to enforce that on somebody else, because why should he be able to decide that, right? Like, there are just some crimes where you are not hurting, like, there's some things that you're not hurting anybody else, and they therefore cannot be crimes. Right? Like, if you are a Bible-believing Christian, like, there is a certain level of, like, you believe that to be sin that you are never going to get past, right? But should the government enforce that as a crime against nature? I hope your answer to that question is no. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you if you're crazy. If you're actually insane. Right? And this speaks to a larger portion of the Trump base that believes that the president can do no wrong. And there have, I remember reading a poll earlier this summer about if the president could change laws such that he could stay in the White House longer, right? Or if, say, at the next election, he didn't win it and refused to leave, like, would you be in support of him? And there were people that were like, yeah. And it wasn't everybody. It wasn't a majority. It's like 15% of that poll. But if that poll is actually representative of America, of which there are 320 million people, 15% of those people think the president can just kind of do whatever he wants, which is scary. Right? That, like, Donald Trump has really gotten in with those people. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's got to be an intellectual or anything like that, but, like, understand how your government works. My God. Like, just understand that. Like, no, your president serves 2 terms, man, and then he leaves. That's it. Okay? That's the example that we got from George Washington. That's it. You don't sit there and try and serve another term, and there would be people who would be legitimately cool with that. And that does not make me feel comfortable, even in the slightest. Keon Rose Show on Nooga Radio 92.7 FM. So another thing that happened, Donald Trump trying to roll out the budget cuts. Now, I actually feel fairly confident about this. It's like one of the things that I'm very confident with Donald Trump on. I'm not very confident with Trump on a lot of things because he comes across to me as unhinged and crazy. And the way that, for instance, the way that he talks about Kim Jong-un and the nukes, it's that to me is insane. That is where I have my knees knocking on Donald Trump, right? The idea that somehow Donald Trump is going to navigate this crisis in which a nation that wants respect has nukes. And sure, we think, well, the nukes can reach Japan, which is an ally of ours, and they can certainly reach South Korea because South Korea is right there. You know, Seoul is right there. And they can certainly reach China, who we work with. Right? Like, we think that this is all fun and games, but also many analysts suspect that the nukes could reach the United States. Okay? And that we have been underestimating the North Koreans for so long that this entire time, while we believed, well, no, they can't reach us, they've actually developed the capabilities to reach us. So aside from the fact that they could hit our allies, they might be able to hit us. And that maybe a world leader who is a dictator in his country, right? Like Trump might be a little cuckoo over here, but he's not a dictator, right? That country has a dictator. If he wants to launch one, he's going to launch one. But maybe antagonizing that guy is not the best idea. And yet here's our president antagonizing the only world leader crazier than him. Like, I don't get it. That scares me. Trump on tax reform? I'm actually cool with Trump on tax reform. Like, I have found a niche, and I don't understand necessarily how this tax reform is going to do all of the things that he said it's going to do. But I feel safer with the idea of him talking about money. When you elected as a president a man who runs a business that's got hotels all over the world, that's the area of expertise that I thought, well, he's definitely going to do all right there. I think he's going to do all right with tax stuff because he understands what taxes as a business person he would like to not pay. And he would figure out how to get other businesses to not have to pay those taxes too. And then hopefully, as those businesses spend more money here in America, that opens up the private sector here and we get more jobs here. But here's the thing that I think is being lost in all of this. And that is this idea that we're somehow going to return jobs to America. And this notion that that if jobs leave America, especially jobs that are factory jobs, jobs that we would consider, I think in this country to be menial labor, necessary jobs, but not jobs that most people seek after, that's going to fix all of our problems. When nothing could be further from the truth. When you want, I think, a market, a global market that works together, and that some jobs are better off done in developing countries than here, right? And that if we lose more in the markets, let's say to create something, let's say that we don't make as many cars as we used to because there's another country making cars, but we like those cars. Those cars are very high quality cars. Then you still end up opening up jobs for people who need to sell the cars that the world is making. And this notion that in order to fix the U.S. economy, it's the U.S. versus the world, when we are just a giant gear in the world market, right? We may be one of the bigger gears, but we're still a gear. Like, we don't get, it's not a U.S. versus the world thing. And also this notion also that jobs are disappearing because they're being taken out of America and they're being sent to China and they're being sent to the Middle East, they're being sent to South America and sent to India. I mean, yeah, some of those jobs are, for sure, right? I mean, anytime that you have a problem with any device, right? Your cell phone stops working and then you call to try and get the thing fixed, and oh no, you've reached some person in India who is absolutely out of touch with your personal reality. I understand that, but there's a reason why that's happening, right? Like that is a way in which we are losing jobs, and the way in which we are losing jobs in America, I think that's part of it. But also, we have to realize that we live in a world that is more technologically advanced than it has ever been, and it is getting more technologically advanced by the day. Machines are taking a lot of our jobs. They're not being exported. They're being done here by robots. Right? Like, at the moment, understand, because we've got some warehouses here in Chattanooga and some factories here in Chattanooga. Your jobs aren't going anywhere. Like Volkswagen, FedEx, Amazon, those jobs are here. I'm telling you, the moment that they can replace those jobs with a robot, they will replace all of those jobs with a robot. And giving a company tax breaks is only going to incentivize them to find cheaper ways to find labor, which includes mechanizing things and computerizing things and making robots the focal point of, because, I mean, robots don't need brakes. We just have an irrational way of thinking about all of this stuff, that we're losing all of our jobs to other countries, and at the same time, we're losing all of our jobs to Mexicans coming into the country. And of course, that's not how this is working. We're losing a lot of our jobs to machinery. And there isn't an amount of tax reform that's going to make that not true. Right? Like the jobs that aren't going to be replaced as easily are service jobs, at least at the moment. Like, we need to figure out how it is to get America to a level of technical advancement so that we have people who can work on these robots and build these robots and understand these robots, because that's where our country is going. And so, like, we've seen, I think we're seeing a misguided emphasis on trying to get back factory jobs. They're not coming back, okay? Because even if you could somehow limit the amount of jobs leaving America to be done by people in developing nations and just other countries, you're still not going to fix the fact that if we get those jobs back, that just means more robots, right? We live in a world where we are working on the concept of the self-driving car. I mean, you're not getting those jobs back, right? Like this insistence that the president has on getting the coal jobs back. Here we got to revive coal country. We're using less and less coal. That's why we're losing coal jobs. We have found things that are more efficient than coal. That's why we're losing those jobs. What we need to do for the people of coal country is get those people jobs on computers, in IT, with data systems, because that's where our country is going. We're going to need people to run all these robots that are taking our jobs, okay? Machines are taking our jobs. We're desperately in need of tax reform, right? And I have not gone through all the details of the tax reform. I'm not smart enough to read it once and get it, okay? So I'll have to go through that more. But I'll tell you this, but I will tell you this. Where our country is, we need people who learn to use technology and understand that. And we are falling further and further and further and further behind in our understanding of math and numbers. When you look at our education, and we have public education, I know a great number of people, including David Tulis at this very station, that he believes in private education. And I know a lot of privately schooled people who are some of the smartest people that I know. But for those people who have no choice but to rely on public education, can we get the public education to be better? Like to just be marginal, because there are some places in this country, especially Alabama, where Donald Trump is now pushing for Roy Moore to be a senator, even though he has no plan for education reform. There are many places that could use the education reform. And if you want jobs to not be taken away in the future, how about we train Americans so we can run all of these machines that we're creating? Because that's where it's going. You're not technologically advanced enough. You are going to be knocked out. And that's where China is going to be really taking it from us, right? China and India and all of these places that are getting more technologically advanced by the hour. The people in those countries are learning tech jobs, and we're still trying to get the factory jobs back. And someone needs to tell me how that makes any sense whatsoever. People who are tech savvy are going to be the people who are running things in the next 15 to 20 years. And those people are in elementary school right now. And we need some kind of education reform, right? Like the tax reform is great. Can we fix the school? Because that's where we're losing. Keon Rose Show here on Nooga Radio and 92.7 FM. I'll see you all 24 hours.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3.